Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the webinar, Solving Missouri's Childcare Puzzle, focused today on the business of childcare. We're really excited you're here and really excited about our presenters as well. My name is Patty Cantrell. I am with the Rural Community Development Corporation New Growth. And if you'll advance the slide, Wacy, want to introduce New Growth and our partners at University of Missouri Extension that helped put our report together. And this webinar is coming out of an effort by New Growth and University of Missouri Extension to understand one of the different solutions to this crisis that we have in childcare nationally, but also in Missouri, related to supporting those small and home-based businesses that are our childcare providers. So New Growth, as a community development corporation, has several programs working to build strength in our rural communities and across the state. New Growth Women's Business Center is one of those. We work in a 15-county area in West Central Missouri to build rural businesses, including our childcare businesses. New Growth has also established a rural transit program that is growing, and food and farm businesses are part of what we work on. And we do all this in conjunction with our parent organization, which is West Central Missouri Community Action Agency. And so for a few years now, we've been looking at how can we help and work on the bigger picture of childcare businesses in the state. With some support, a small grant, we were able to work with University of Missouri Extension to look into the concept of sharing services. That's all those things from accounting to financial management that your businesses need in order to grow. And so University of Missouri Extension, on the call here is Sarah Kennedy, who heads up a lot of work statewide in their office, in their childhood effort. Do you want to say anything, Sarah, before we get going?
Sure. My name is Sarah Kennedy. I am a field specialist in community development with MU Extension, with a special focus on early childhood impact. So my position really focuses on connecting the dots across University of Missouri Extension as well as across the University of Missouri to understand the programs and resources that we have that are working on this early childcare crisis, and then to figure out how to connect those programs and resources to communities throughout the state of Missouri to better support and improve childcare where we can. So, yeah.
Okay, and what we want to do first is just give you a little bit of an overview and then introduce our panelists for a panel discussion. Next slide. So I think we're all aware there is a long-term chronic childcare crisis that we're working with in Missouri. And, you know, you've heard the concept of a childcare desert, where much of our state has very few options, if any. And there's a lot of aspects of addressing this challenge. One of those is, as we've mentioned just a little bit ago, sharing services and supporting those small and home-based businesses that make up our childcare workforce. Next slide. So we've proposed that one of the missing pieces is what you might call central office support. And we're going to be hearing from people in this webinar and the next two the following Mondays about something called a Shared Services Alliance. And that's where organizations working with childcare providers, from centers to home family-based childcare providers, work with those independent members to address common challenges, whether it's limited resources, staffing shortages, and big ones like regulatory compliance and financial management. And that's a way of providing that central office support. Next slide. And just real quickly, it ranges in types of support and how they build on each other. There's typically a tier one of support where providers are access a lot of really important cost saving and capacity building resources that are vetted and childcare specific and save people time and money. And that includes volume discounts for group purchasing on things like toys and cleaning supplies. This is very common in business, where you have this kind of back office support and combining purchasing power, et cetera, to accomplish those kinds of efficiencies in business. It does not exist in childcare right now, and that's what this approach works towards. And another level beyond that is really working very intensively one-on-one with the childcare providers to look at their business and strategically look at what's going on and look at numbers of their work, their business, and we'll be hearing more about that to help them really make sure they can meet that bottom line on their expenses and moving forward as a business. And then at a higher level, some shared services alliances actually have back office staff, people that are shared staff that actually work and submit paperwork on behalf of members and take a lot of that load off. So it's a big, interesting concept. It's in place in all across this country in many forms, and we want to explore that in this webinar series. Next slide. And basically, I wanted to also point out that some of these automated systems that help shared services alliances and providers get a handle on what's going on in the business, in some states, they are also actually integrating that with the state services so that everybody, all the way to the state agencies, are working together, and there's a lot of reduction in paperwork and things like that. So we'll be talking more about that as well. So next slide. I want to hand it over to Sarah. Our topic today is the business of childcare, and we'll be talking next time about shared services alliances across the country. And then our third webinar on the 16th, we'll be looking at Missouri's assets and opportunities and how we can move this forward. Sarah?
So I'm going to introduce and kind of frame the conversation for today. And so we know that the cost of childcare in Missouri, but really everywhere in the country, is unaffordable. And it is unaffordable and unsustainable on a whole variety of levels. So from the family standpoint, the average cost of childcare in Missouri is over $18,000 per kid per year. And if you look at that against housing, typically a family pays about $16,000 in housing, or even college tuition is more like $10,000 to $11,000. So the fact that childcare in the first 5 years of life, you are paying more than college tuition is unaffordable for families. Then you look at it from the childcare business side. The business of childcare has some additional cost. These additional costs are things like you need to have a fence around the outdoor area. You need different things in your business for fire safety compliance. And those additional costs add cost to the business. Then there's the ratios you need to take into account. And so with infants and toddlers, you have 4 infant and toddlers to 1 adult. That causes the cost of care to be high. Then you need to take into account all the supplies of just running a business. So we all know that inflation has increased the cost of just common everyday supplies. And so as revenue streams are staying stagnant or even decreasing, this is causing childcare businesses to have to close. This is causing childcare businesses to struggle to make ends meet because all of these additional costs are very hard to keep covered in the current ecosystem of childcare. Then if you look at this on the business side of things, businesses in Missouri are losing $1.3 billion in economic opportunity. This comes from the Missouri Chamber of Commerce. And that also in turn is a loss of $280 million in tax revenue. we have businesses complaining about worker shortages. Well, if people can't afford to have their children go somewhere during the day in a place that they feel safe, they are choosing not to go to work. And so this in turn is causing a lot of businesses to have worker shortages. So all of these different costs are kind of what causes childcare to be unaffordable and unsustainable. Next slide. And so I kind of touched on this previously, that really childcare businesses are unique because there are a whole variety of things that need to be taken into account. So childcare businesses are educating children. And so there are all kinds of different things involved in educating children. And so this might be things like curriculum, this might be supplies, think about diapers for infants, and various things like that are additional cost on the child development, child education side of it. Then there's just the regular business cost that exist, and these are just the regular supplies, so office supplies, but you need toys, all of those different things come into play in a childcare business. And so today we've invited 3 speakers to kind of talk with us all to understand the cost of childcare. What does a childcare business look like? Why is it such a difficult business to run? Why do the cost end up being unaffordable to parents, and all of the things that are involved in there. So I'm going to turn it back to Patty.
Thank you, Sarah. And again, Sarah is with University of Missouri Extension, a contributor to our report, Solving Missouri's Childcare Puzzle, where we are introducing a missing piece being central back office support. And we've talking about, again, about shared services alliances as one way to do that. Our speakers today come with experience in shared services alliances and working with businesses, childcare businesses in Missouri. I'd like to start we're going to introduce each one by name and title, and then we're going to give them each a few minutes to kind of talk about their work with childcare businesses. And then we'll have some questions for them. And you are welcome to put your questions in the Q&A box, and we'll keep a watch on that. So I'd like to start with Paula Drew. Paula is Director of Early Care and Education Policy and Research at Wisconsin Early Child Association. I'll introduce the others and then go back to Paula. Lynette Watson is the business St. Louis Regional Director for the Missouri Small Business Development Corporation, or Development Center. That's a group of small business centers across the state, and she leads the St. Louis office. Joanna Borden is a consultant with a national group called Opportunities Exchange that works across the country in developing shared services alliances for the support of childcare businesses. So each one of them will give us a few minutes about their work, and then we'll get into our questions. Paula?
Hi, everybody. I'm happy to be here today. As Patty said, I work at the Wisconsin Early Childhood Association, and we are the AEYC affiliate of Wisconsin, so the National Association of Young Children. During my time at Wisconsin Early Childhood Association, I've been primarily working on co-developing and co-leading a shared services network, which now serves around 2,300 childcare providers across the state, both family childcare providers and group directors. Before that, I have an extensive background, around 20 years of direct service in early care and education, both teaching and working in administration. And very recently just released a book that a co-worker, Kelly Matthews, and also Amy Friedlander from Opportunities Exchange wrote on childcare business practices that we are including as one of the resources.
Thank you, Paula. Lynette, I'd like to move to you and your work at SBDC and Missouri childcare businesses.
Hello, good afternoon, everybody. Again, I'm Lynette Watson. I have been working with childcare businesses probably for about 25 years. I started with the Women's Business Center, and at that time we had the Arches grant. We worked with Arches, and we had a grant where we helped build capacity for startups. We helped build capacity for existing businesses, and we helped start up new childcare centers. It was during the welfare to work phase where we needed more childcare slots so people could go back to work. It was then that I learned how challenging it was to run a childcare business, and how many childcare businesses, they love taking care of kids, but they didn't understand the business of the business. So we started to create programs that helped childcare businesses understand that, you cannot continue to care for kids if you're not taking care of the business. From there, I went to and ran an incubator, and and I was the director of economic development. One of my charges was the child adult food care program, which we had for economic development reasons, and I was affiliated with Southside Day Nursery, so very familiar with that revenue stream, the child adult food care program. And then from there on, we just started to create curriculum, working with different organizations that were geared specifically to childcare facilities. And one of those is understanding your financial statements and how to read financials and how to manage your business with your financials, and how to make sure you have a good, strong, solid infrastructure. Your back office is in order. You have contracts that work. You have good bookkeeping. You can read your financial statements, and then from there, I went on to work with the Mosika project that we that ran the last couple of years, and there we taught the basics of writing a business plan. We taught understanding financial statements and also QuickBooks. So have lots and lots of experience working with childcare businesses. I totally understand the challenges that exist, and then I'm also one that's very, very honest about our state is lagging in the resources and support that they provide to childcare facilities. Our reimbursement rate is terribly low, and it makes it very, very hard on our childcare facilities. So they have to be very efficient.
All right, thank you so much. We're going to dig into some of those challenges and ways to address those here in a minute. And Joanna, if you'll just spend a couple minutes telling us about your work in that way.
Absolutely. And thanks for having me. Excited to be here. So some of my expertise that I bring to the table is around program management and data systems and automation. You'll hear me talk about automation a lot. At Opportunities Exchange, I collaborate with technologists and end users to enhance childcare management systems, so CCMSs, help to craft impactful dashboards and reports while streamlining data collection, which is super important in compliance processes. I also provide business coaching tied to automation and facilitate communities of practice with a few of the technology vendors we work with, and develop really integrate resources to deepen understanding of the ECE technology ecosystem. I'm super passionate about leveraging technology to really help empower our early childhood programs. So I'll share more about our focused areas and really what we've been doing here at Opportunities Exchange a little later during the panel. Thanks.
Thank you, Joanna, Lynette, and Paula. You all bring a lot of experience to this, and we're excited to have you with us. So our first question, just to level, get everybody on the same page, let's dig in a little bit about what is so challenging about the childcare space for businesses, thinking in terms of, again, what are some things that could really, we could help them with, and we'll be talking about that too. But what are those challenging spaces, and maybe hear from everybody a little bit more on that. Lynette, if you go first, having worked with Missouri businesses.
I will go back to, I think one of the biggest issues is cash flow for childcare businesses. And again, it starts with at the state level, for those that are taking state assisted children. It is very tough when you're starting when the state is one of the lowest reimbursement providers currently. So it's a challenge. And the other thing is operating the business. Again, we want to take care of kids, but we also have to make sure that we are being efficient. certainly like the technology piece, because the more efficient you can be, the more children you can serve, even though we have the child ratios, which is also very necessary, but very challenging to make your to make a profit. When you have, I tell my small businesses all the time, they're like, I want infants, I get more money with infants, but I have to remind them that, yeah, you're going to get more money, but you need more staffing. So, and staffing is normally the biggest cost for these for childcare providers. And so you have to think about who you're adding and why you're adding. So it's really getting, one of the challenges is really getting the businesses to think about it from a business perspective. And childcare is a heartstring business. It's a business that you go into from the heart. You don't go into it to make money. But we see those that aren't paying attention to the business. We lost a lot of childcare businesses during COVID and since COVID. And it is because we're not paying attention to the business. So, that's a very big deal. Being more efficient, working together more, and also making sure that we are not just working in the business, but we're working on the business.
Thank you, Lynette. And when you mentioned that about the knowing how much staff you need if you're going to add infants, that points to some really in the report and elsewhere, we've heard of that called the iron triangle of childhood finance to really understand that. And so I know that Paula might mention that too. So I'll hand it up to you to respond to this whole challenges question, and then Joanna.
Yeah, so I think Lynette's done a really good job of giving a broad overview, and I think I'll go into detail just the day in the life of a childcare provider. So whether you're a family provider or you're a director of a program, these are primarily small businesses. Of course, there are some very large programs, some that are already networked that maybe are known as chains in various states, but primarily there's one person who's sort of in charge. And during the day, they might be acting as the principal of the school, talking to parents, talking to children, acting as a facilities manager. If something breaks or goes wrong, they might be, plunging a toilet or figuring out why the heat hasn't come on. The cook doesn't show up, they're cooking the food. They might be the bus driver. They might be substitute teaching in a classroom because the staff person didn't show up. They're the chief financial officer in most cases. And it's hard to knock out all those roles, within 8 hours of the day. And then to Lynette's point, you got to think about these three pillars of the iron triangle, which is full enrollment, full fee collection, and ensuring what you're charging is covering the costs for your kiddos. So that means you have to know to expect a little bit of bad debt. You have to be right into your budget. Enrollments may be going to be 85% based on these past 3 years and what what our data tells us. You have to be thinking about how to support your staff. We haven't talked about staff at all, but staff is the most important component of childcare programming, right? Every time you lose a staff, you're losing money, but those kiddos are also losing that attachment and that relationship. Staffing is expensive, and I would argue that we're not paying early childhood professionals what they deserve and what they need to stay in this field. So we have a lot of turnover. And turnover holds down the number of seats you can hold in a program, which then makes it harder on your business overall. So those are a few things that are at the top of my mind in terms of what's so challenging. And I guess the last thing I'll say is, it is a really intimate business. Sometimes a parent loses a job. People leave and they don't pay. Your liability insurance goes up. Your landlord finds out you're running a small business in your home and they jack up the prices. And childcare is inelastic. You can't all of a sudden, tomorrow the tuition rates are increasing because this happened. Parents are paying about as much as they can pay already. So there's not a lot to work with, and there's a lot of work to do.
Thank you, Paula. Joanna?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with both Lynette and Paula around that administrative burden, the financial instability. workforce retention, and I will say technology gaps is where I will kind of focus, because I think we've built this first question up to the point where I would love to bring in that childcare management system. A lot of what Paula and Lynette shared can really support a director if they're using a childcare management system. So they can see at real time where their ratios are, if they have to move teachers because one teacher did not show up, if they need to move children even, right? Because they're going to be out of ratio between classrooms. So if they are in the bathroom plunging the toilet, they can, really easily see at the, on an app where they are with that. Same thing, I agree with cash flow. If using a childcare management system, maintaining stable cash flow and managing that bad debt really can help by automating those family invoices, thinking about being paid on time, being paid that full fee. This childcare management systems can really act for that director, that administrator as a personal assistant and do that work for them. Everything can be automated and ready to go for those families. And we know that a lot of our families are, are getting comfortable with technology because a lot of the things we do are technology based. We're using QR codes at restaurants. We're doing our banking online. We're, using Venmo. Some of those day-to-day kind of needs that parents are engaging with. So I will say, all of this to say that definitely that administrative burden will really be lessened. That workload will be lessened and reduced if bringing in some technology and being able to manage that and see the day-to-day.
Thank you. And before we move on to the next question, what's hitting me, and some people might have this in our mind, is like, this is a problem from all small businesses, right? All small businesses need this. But there's something going on with childcare in terms of, and this is my assessment, but I'd like to hear from you all on that, but very highly regulated to a very high regulatory compliance issue. Like she said, it's inelastic, and this is our workforce taking care of our children, right? So there's some responsibility on the part of us, like as if we were a corporate parent, to take care of that workforce in this way. So anyway, what do you think about that? Why is this a big deal for childcare versus other small businesses?
I can kick this off, and I'll just say, the U.S. Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen recently said that childcare is a broken market. Parents can't pay what it actually costs to provide high quality care. So there's not enough resources to go around for each of these individual small businesses. Yes, we are highly regulated, but there's a reason for that, right? We're taking care of tiny humans who can't even speak to talk about what their experiences are every day. So it's important. And the part that doesn't work is that there's just not enough revenue coming in, which is why we're looking at innovations like shared services, like technology, childcare management software that can help these small business owners leverage every dollar that's coming into their program to the best of their ability. And I guess one thing I'll say is thinking about the future, and I think maybe we'll get into this a little bit more a little bit later, but right now our sector, because of the way it's set up, is a bunch of tiny small businesses. We're connected in some ways, right, through regulation, but we're not deeply connected as an infrastructure to provide a public good to the citizens of U.S. in a way that they need. And someday there is going to be government funding coming into the sector. And I also think that technology, to Joanna's part, is going to play a big part in how these small businesses get connected together to really do the most good with the funding that does come.
Thanks, Paula. And I think that's a good segue into our next question about what are some of the opportunities for improving things. And you mentioned childcare management system, Joanna, and we just talked about technology as a part of the solution. And maybe just to back up, what is a childcare management system and what does it do, for the childcare businesses and the system overall?
Absolutely. So childcare management systems really helps the day-to-day operations of a program. So it's a data system that collects from your enrollment, your financial invoicing for families, you can track your cash flow. You can collect all of your required documentation. You can communicate with families. There's a family engagement component to that. There's even in some childcare management system more of the curriculum engagement and the ability to share some of the menus of families. So there's a CACFP portion of it. So that's what a childcare management system does. And I do, and Paula and Lynette can also attest to this, I'm sure, is adopting and optimizing a CCMS really does help that administrator to decrease that burden. We've seen in a lot of the work that we've done, not only hours back for that childcare administrator if they're automating and using a childcare management system, but also again to that full fee collection, they're seeing more of their cash flow, or they're seeing where there's gaps or barriers to collecting the cash flow, collecting their cash and their invoices for families. And it does the work for them, so they don't have to have those hard conversations with families about your invoices due. A lot of it is automated, so it sends reminders. It gives families the autonomy to pay different ways that invoice. So just as an example of how a childcare management system can support, same as automating enrollment, it goes from the time the parent kind of engages with that program to enrollment and anything in between. So being able to communicate with the family, add them to a wait list, schedule tours, send documentation, collect documentation right in the system. A lot of the childcare management systems have forms, the forms capability. So if a family completes an application, all of that then automatically creates a child profile. And the program does not have to do any data entry into a system. Everything's collected, everything's there, and easily accessible, easily updated whenever there's changes to an emergency contact or an address or a phone number. So that's some of the examples of what a childcare management system can really support a program in.
Thank you. And just to segue, childcare management system, or CCMS, you've described some of the things it can do. And I just wanted to add that I've learned through this research that in a lot of shared services alliances, that is provided through dollars that support the development of the shared services alliance. So a lot of times it's public state dollars or foundation funding. So this is not on the childcare provider to buy a bunch of stuff, but it's about providing that infrastructure so they have those benefits, and then everybody can benefit in that way. And maybe you guys, Paula, Lynette, just talk a little bit about, go from there, on the benefits of that and other ways to support opportunities to support these businesses.
I'll start there. I think, having a solid infrastructure takes work. And it's more than having a system. It's more than having shared services. You have to have mindset changes with the small business owners because, again, they're trying to keep the doors open. So they're not spending that time building the infrastructure. So, I often say you need an accountability partner sometimes. You need a coach that's going to come in and be that accountability for you. The state is doing a better job of that, of providing funding for organizations, not just mine, but other organizations, to go in and to provide those services to small businesses, because I can have the best CCS, the best management system. I can have, the shared services can all be available to me. But if I am running around, trying to make sure my kids are taken care of, my kids are safe, and I haven't built in that time to work on the business, then it doesn't mean anything. So I think the biggest thing, and you mentioned that, was starting with the infrastructure. We have to sometimes take the businesses back and say, you know what, you're building a great business, but you're building it on a shaky infrastructure. Let's get your infrastructure sound and let's get it solid. Let's make sure, you are operating efficient. And this is how you're operating efficient. And I'm going to come in once a week And we're going to talk about what you've done. We're going to talk about how you're using this system, because if I've been in one child care facility, I've been in a million. They have, I think it's called Bright Spot. I'm not sure what some of the CRMs that they have, but they have it and they're using a piece of it because they haven't taken the time to figure out how to use the rest of it. Or they have shared services available to them, or they have training available to them, but they believe they're too busy to work on the business, so they just keep working in the business. And I often say it's like you're a hamster on a wheel. You're just going round and round and round and round doing what you've been doing, but you're not going anywhere. You're staying in the same place. So I think it starts again with building that solid infrastructure and having someone that you can talk to and that can coach you through and can help you be accountable. And then sometimes they just get stuck. We understand the technology. Sometimes they don't. And if they don't understand the technology, they're usually going to put it on a shelf. So our goal is to keep them from putting things that can help them become more efficient, more effective on the shelf, and helping them to start to utilize those for the best of their ability and the best of the business.
Thank you, Lynette. And I'm going to start the next round of comments by handing it off to Paula, who we talked a little bit, you talked about building a strong business from the start. And we've been talking about the need not only for automation, but coaching and, that accountability partner. So I think we want to start talking a little bit about that. And I also want to put in the chat for everyone. Paula Drew just published a book called Build It Strong about building your childhood business from the start like that. And I want to make sure everybody has an opportunity to check that out with that link. Paula, start us off with the next conversation as we go.
Thanks. I guess first, I just wanted, Joanna, did you have anything else you wanted to say about childcare management software? I kind of felt like you were.
Sure, if you don't mind me. I just also wanted to share, because I was saying childcare management systems, and you are correct. There's Brightwheel, there's ProCare, there's Playground, but I do agree with Lynette. There's such value in having business coaches that really can support this process. And we do encourage that when we're talking to business coaches, really give them, because they also need to be comfortable in explaining a childcare management system, walking a provider through that process. And then having those one-on-one touch points, being able to check in with them, giving them various ways to connect with the system in a manageable timeframe and ability for them to do. So I just wanted to add that I do really feel like that the business coaching is such a strong component to that, to really seeing success in the childcare management systems being used. Thanks, Paula.
Yeah, for sure. I think in general, sort of an evolution of where we've been and where we are now is growing rapidly. The wide usage of childcare management software, and I agree, Lynette, like it is hard to learn something new, especially technology, when most of your life you've been working directly with kids and families. But when you get to the other side and you realize these things are actually saving you a lot of time. And right now they're very easy to use. They're very easy to use. They're all cloud-based now, so you can use it on your phone if your computer isn't working. And the benefit is not only for the provider and them saving time, but it's also providing, it can provide really important data for folks like us who are sitting here thinking about how can we solve these complex problems? Well, understanding like what is the real problem? I would argue the real problem is that there is not affordable quality infant and toddler care, because it's very expensive to provide infant and toddler care. States are investing a lot in preschool age kiddos. For example, in Wisconsin, a 4-year-old gets about $7,000 per year from the state for pre-K. A K-12 student gets around $14,000, and an infant gets around $60 a year towards their educational journey. Because we haven't told the right story, and we're going to get there by using data, and we collect data from all of these tiny businesses by connecting them to this infrastructure that we're talking about. And I also think there's just because the pandemic sort of shed a light on the necessity of this field. People really rolled up their sleeves and got creative about solving these problems. And, you know, there are organizations who are thinking about complex issues like tax preparation. Tax preparation for family childcare is pretty complex. People get it wrong all the time, and family childcare providers are losing money. Right now, there's a free, easy app online through some test strategies that walk somebody through doing their own family childcare taxes, which did not exist 5 years ago and probably wouldn't have. But now we know sort of like what are the pain points, and now the future is really drilling down to the data to see what's exactly needed and who's going to be there to step up to solve that challenge.
Thank you. Again, we're talking about opportunities to address those challenges that we've discussed, and we've talked a little bit about childcare management system and new resources like that. I know Shared Services Alliances are working to provide that kind of professional service to their members. What other opportunities do we see, or can we talk about along those lines of working with our childcare businesses and maybe what a Shared Services Alliance actually does too?
I'd like to speak on that. I think we have to advocate. And I think advocacy, we cannot do it in our silos. It is thousands of childcare businesses in Missouri, and at all sizes, all shapes, all that, I think we have to come together, whether you're a large center or a small, home-based business, we have to advocate, we have to tell our story, and we have to do it together. And, we hear it all the time. We hear that, kids learn the most in their early childhood years. However, that's not supported by where the money is actually going. So we have to advocate. We have to be talking to our politicians not at the local level, not just at the federal level, the local level, the state level, the federal level. We have to not only be doing advocacy, we have to, vote accordingly. We have to start to talk to each other. I get a little discouraged sometimes when I see, a lot of these organizations will bring childcare providers resources and tools, and there are 5 people there. We have to again, we have to continue to advocate, and we have to hold each other accountable. I think each childcare, I have one childcare business that I work with owner, and she's very much an advocate, and she holds the people that she works with around accountable. She'll call other childcare facilities and say, look, I can't do this by myself. I need your help. If we stand together, we're going to be stronger. And I think we need somebody that is, that can do that can bring and I know we're doing that through shared services and things of that nature, but I think shared services, while we're building shared services and we're building these coalitions, we need to make sure that we are encouraging these coalitions to advocate. I know it's tougher when they're nonprofits, but for those that are for-profits, they really, really need to be advocating for themselves.
Thank you, Lynette. And I think that speaks to some of the infrastructure that we can build, the ability to speak together and influence policy too.
Absolutely.
Paula, Joanna, do you want to roll with some of that, or other opportunities for addressing the infrastructure and needs of these businesses?
I'd like to kind of bring in and have everyone think about kind of government agencies also, and regulatory bodies and accredited organizations being part of this childcare management system conversation and collection of data, because I do think that that's another component to helping programs decrease stressors, because they're having to report out to a lot of other agencies and governing bodies and stakeholders. That gives them an opportunity, if everyone's at the table, everyone's supporting kind of this data collection, childcare management system support, that really decreases the stress around the providers. And so, really helping them through that process is another, I think, component and something for us to think about. in ways that we can support programs to decrease that.
I guess
Thank you.
I'll sort of connect these dots to say, so advocacy can be providers connected in a strong network, advocating to the state to say, this is what we'd like. We'd like these systems to talk to each other so we don't have to waste so much of our time inputting the same information into 6 different systems because we need that time to do these other things. And I think that's a really beautiful part of a shared services network, is that providers together, that's a big scale. That's scale that you can use to negotiate lower prices, advocate for rule changes, and also advocate for funding. And I think as individual businesses, we're kind of separate, right? Everybody's doing their own thing. Sometimes we might even be in competition with each other. But when we're connected together through a shared services type of network, utilizing shared staffing, shared back office, we kind of are understanding where people are coming from, what a family child care provider is going through versus what a center director is going through, and they might not understand that about each other even. And through that shared understanding, there's a lot of power in the scale of a network in which you're not just one business anymore. You can be 2,300 businesses knocking on the door of the state saying, this needs to be changed. And that is really, really powerful. And, I know that's not the first intention of shared services. It's to make time and money more efficient so providers, can do all of the millions of jobs they need to do and keep those margins in the black, leverage expertise of business folks who can come in one day a week and help them map out a realistic budget for the year, those sorts of things. But the scale in Wisconsin has helped us push companies that we've worked with to come around to language equity, to lower their prices, to provide things in ways that are more user-friendly. It's helped us to negotiate with the state in terms of what their rules are and how they apply actually to childcare management software and how providers can use those to meet paperwork compliances. And then right now in Wisconsin, it's a budget year for us. And with the COVID relief money running out, this network and all providers in the state are advocating for state investment. And I think that's a really powerful thing that a network can do, bringing people, individual businesses together in that way.
Hey, I'm going to take an opportunity just to also restate for everyone who may be new to this concept that we're bringing across in our report and these series is that, a shared services alliance is how we build the infrastructure and support for our childcare businesses. There's like 3 levels. One level is just tools and capacity building resources. And that's, opportunities to get discounted volume purchasing together or get really good resources instead of having to do it all by yourself or go searching online for these resources, whether it's an employee or handbook or a parent handbook. So there's a whole layer around that that's very valuable. And then the second layer is around what we've talked a little bit about, and that is trying to gather coaches and our data together to really manage our businesses more closely. And we've talked a little bit about that. And then through that network, as we've been discussing, we have more ability to influence and look at, the things that we all share in challenges, whether it's different rules or entering data in 6 places. There's a way to move those things ahead. And there is that third level that some shared services alliances go to where they've built that connection and they trust to have some people doing some of that back office work, filing the paperwork. And that, again, is supported by these childcare management systems and the network that's been built. So we're at the ground level in Missouri. We think this is an opportunity for our state to talk a little bit about that. And I'm excited. I want to go back to you all talking a little bit. We have a few minutes left for our panel discussion to just wrap up some things that maybe haven't been said that's really important for people to understand about this sector and what some of the things we can do that are most important priorities for moving forward. Hop in, Lynette. You're not muted, so you're first.
Oh, since I'm not muted. First of all, I think this sector is very, very, very important to our community as a whole. And I think we have to continue to get the word out that, this is really, when I say this to people, they look at me, but I'm like, this is our future. How we educate our children starting from the very beginning is our future. Making sure that the people that are providing the child care are interested in, I'm often not the most um what will I say? I sometimes say what people don't want to hear. But everybody shouldn't be in the business of childcare. Number one, making sure that people that get in the business are looking to be better. They're looking, they have to want to do more than the business of taking care of kids. They also have to stay in business, they're going to have to do the business of the business. So encouraging them to, you can take better care of your children if you have a sound operating organization. So that's number one. The other thing that is super important is we have got to start figuring out how to increase the pay. And I know that is not at the providers level, that we have to figure, because our businesses are only as good as our employees. And that's with any business. That's with any small business. Your business is only as good as your employees. It is very hard. This is a tough economic climate to keep employees. And it is very hard to keep employees when they're not, we don't have the funds to adequately train them. And we don't also have the funding to pay them what they, to keep them. And so the turnover, like you mentioned it, we don't need the turnover. The kids like continuity. Businesses need continuity. So, those are some areas that I think the shared services, I love the shared services. They started talking about this when I got in childcare 25 years ago, and, they played at it a lot, but you guys are really, really, really looks like getting some traction. So I'm very excited about that, because I think a lot of the things that ail us, the things that have challenged us for the years, can be overcome, or at least dealt with, when we have these things available for our childcare businesses. And there's nothing better than having a good, easy to use uh, system for our technology purposes to help us be more efficient. So, I'm actually leaving uh, this panel feeling really encouraged and really ready to roll my sleeves up and get involved and see how we can help.
Thank you, Lynette. Joanna, you're unmuted. Go for it.
Yeah, I'll jump in. Thank you. Yeah, I agree with Lynette. The financial stability is one thing I would say is a priority to really invest in, supporting programs to really support with them with grants and subsidies, encouraging them to have practices to review their enrollment trends and align their rates and with their budgets. I think that's a super important component to it that shared services alliances can support with. The workforce, Lynette also shared, and I will co-sign that as is something that's really needed in the field. And then I will bring back the technology conversation. So technology and training, I think, is a huge investment, really expanding the use of childcare management systems. I can't stress enough. We've seen lots of progress in some of the states we've worked in with those programs really having more sustainable financial and growth in their organizations. And then that data utilization, really using what we have and to support programs with, additional investments statewide, or any information that we need to really push the narrative around, decreasing that the data entry and the need for states, governing bodies, all of that to request information from programs that really, create an additional stressor because they're doing it at different timelines and different data systems, et cetera. So I would say those would be the top 4 that I would close out with as priorities for investment.
Thank you.
One thing I just wanted to make a connection of in terms of shared services and the capacity to increase wages through a shared services network, which can be done through that administrative support coming from a shared services network, which means folks you have on staff and administrative roles could be reduced. So then you have more money available to be able to spend on your teaching staff. So I just want to make that point known that, you know, we're talking about change that can happen now. And we're also hopeful for change that will eventually come for this sector, and changes that can happen now. You know, you don't have to be a giant chain program to be able to leverage economies of scale and shared staffing because of the innovation of shared services and early care and education. And that does, you know, can really impact your bottom line in ways that will allow you to pay your staff slightly better wages. And I also think in terms of advocacy and utilizing a shared services network back office to help calculate things like, what would your true cost of care be if you were able to charge what you actually needed to charge to pay each of your teachers a thriving wage with the proper benefits to secure the supplies you actually would like to have in your classrooms to help your children thrive? Like, what would that number be? Because that number is really important for advocating, right? And I think it's hard to even, when you're living in this world every day, it's hard to even dream of like what you would really do if you had the money. And yet that type of data point is critical to advocating for an investment. And because I grew up in the early care and education field, like my wish is that if we get additional government funding, either state or federal, states are doing really great things already. First and foremost, that needs to go into the workforce. People, you know, care about this work that they're doing. They want to be able to stay in teaching roles. And like most of us, like myself included, when you have your own kids, you can't stay because there's not enough money to make that work for a family. And folks deserve to be taken care of. And parents can't pay more, so we need additional revenue coming in. And parents also can't pay more. And it is very difficult to be a parent of small children. You're usually at the beginning of sort of your own career, which means you have the least amount of money available, most likely, and you're facing really, really steep costs, as Sarah, you know, started us out with in the beginning. So parents need assistance to help pay for care, and educators need wages to help them stay in the field.
Thank you, Paula. Those were great closing comments, and we just have a couple minutes to close out. So just wanted to wrap that. Again, we're talking about business support from the level of sharing services to larger data business coaching that can all add up to those longer term things we need, but also immediate benefits to saving money and time in your business, which is critical for our childcare businesses right now. We want to, in addition to thanking our panel, give you guys if Wacy could bring that back up, our slideshow. We have some resources and a little preview of our upcoming webinars the next 2 Mondays. So why don't you go to the slide with the QR code for the report, given the time, and we'll send you guys additional resources along with a survey post webinar, because it'd be great to hear from you all on that. And this is Sarah. I'll just go ahead and do this real quick, but the report goes into all the stuff we've been talking about today, including Shared Service Alliance actual examples and what's going on in Missouri and how we can get started. You can access the report with this QR code, and I'll hand it off to Sarah to close us out the rest of the way.
Next slide. So we have a upcoming webinar on December 9th, and we will be talking more in depth about central office shared services. We'll feature Louise Stoney, Monique Reynolds, and Tasha Gurley. Next slide. And then our last webinar is on December 16th, where we will talk about Missouri's assets and opportunities. So we do have some things that have popped up and have started. And so we really want to make sure that everyone knows about those and where we could possibly start. Next slide. And so here is both my contact information and Patty's contact information. We'll include all of this in the follow-up email with the recording. But Thank you all for coming today, and thank you to our speakers for joining us and having a great panel discussion.
All right, thank you all so much. And we will be sending recording and other resources, as Sarah mentioned. And we'll get going from here in Missouri. Take care.
Thanks for having me. Bye-bye.
Thank you so much.